Oh, I can go, okay.
All right, I'd like to call to order the February 16th, 2021 Board of Zoning Appeals meeting to order. I'd like to start with a roll call, starting to my left.
Don Kurtz.
Hodge Patel.
Todd Chernick.
Jason Cole.
Kim Keller.
For the record, note that Brenda Hampstead is unavailable this evening, and also that we received resignation from Jake Ward, who's moving out of the Milton area. If you please stand and join us with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, republic for one nation, God. I'd like to make an amendment to tonight's agenda, a motion to amend to move voting for the 2021 Board of Zoning Appeals Chair and Vice Chair to follow item number 5 on our agenda prior to consideration of primary variances.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor, and we're first going to vote on this amendment. All those in favor of amending our agenda to move the voting for chair and vice chair to follow item number 5, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. That motion passed unanimous. I then make a motion to approve the amended agenda as published.
Second.
To be clear, not as published, but as amended.
As amended, sorry, thank you. I'd make a motion to approve the amended agenda.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of approval say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. It passed unanimous. Our last meeting was in December of 2020, and we have meeting minutes that have been published and available on the website. I'd make a motion to approve those December 15th, 2020 meeting minutes as published.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Don, by the record, I believe you were not at the December meeting, so you feel free to abstain. All those in favor of approving the December 15th, 2020 meeting minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. And Don Kurt, abstain?
Abstain.
Can you pull your microphone down? Thank you.
I abstain.
You have that for the record? Motion passed, one abstain. That moves us to taking a nomination for, we'll start with chair. And this would be for the duration of 2021. As our bylaws state, we elect chair and vice chair each calendar year. And I'd open the floor for a motion for chair.
I'll motion to nominate Todd Chernick as chair.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Are there any other nominations? All those in favor of renominating Todd Chernick, myself, to chair, say aye.
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 Opposed? Say nay. That motion passed unanimous. We'll now open the floor for a motion for vice chair who would serve as an equal to the chair and in their capacity backing up the chair according to any absences. I'll open the floor for a motion.
I'll make a motion to nominate Hodge Patel as vice chair.
I'll second.
Are there any other nominations? Is there any discussion? All those in favor of renominating Hodge Patel as vice chair, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Congratulations. Unanimous nomination. Now, moving forward with item number 6 on our agenda is consideration of primary variances. And before we introduce the first application, I would note that the Board of Zoning Appeals is a quasi-judicial board comprised of resident volunteers of the City of Milton. The board is charged with hearing requests for variances from the standards of the zoning ordinance and appeals of administrative determination. With regard to decisions on primary variances, the board's basis for decision is provided by these 4 considerations. A, relief if granted would not affect the spirit or intent of the ordinance. And B, there are such extraordinary and exceptional situations or conditions pertaining to the particular piece of property that the literal or strict application of the ordinance would create an unnecessary hardship due to size, shape, or topography, or other extraordinary and exceptional situations or conditions not caused by the variance applicant. And C, relief if granted would not cause a substantial detriment to the public good and surrounding properties. And D, that the public safety, health, and welfare are secured and that substantial justice is done. With that, I would ask staff to please present item V20-27, 770 Cooper Sandy Cove.
V2027 770 Cooper Sandy Cove. Requested variance is to allow the lot coverage for an AG1 zone property that fronts a public street to go from 20% to 25%. The site is a 1.02 acre lot located on the north side of Cooper Sandy Cove. This property is zoned AG1 and is located in the rural Milton Overlay District. The final plat for the property was approved in 1997 as per section 641141D1B. Lot coverage for each individual lot zoned AG1 shall not exceed 20% for lot that fronts on public streets. The current impervious coverage on the lot is 21%, as shown in Exhibit A. The applicant is requesting to build a pool and deck in the rear yard that would increase the impervious coverage from 21% to 23.47%. Therefore, this variance is requested. The applicant worked with the city staff to reduce the proposed footprint as requested by the DRB. Exhibit A shows the former plan that proposed lot coverage of 24.72%. Exhibit B shows the close-up of the pervious pavers design around the pool after the meeting with the staff. Lot coverage is defined in the zoning ordinance as the following. The lot coverage means percentage of impervious surface located on the lot in comparison to the total lot area, calculated by dividing impervious surface area by total lot area. For purposes of calculating lot coverage, impervious surfaces shall include the following. 1. The footprint of the main building regardless of size. The total footprints of any accessory buildings larger than 150 square feet. Swimming pools, hot tubs, and associated decks and parking, and 4. Parking pads and driveways. This application was deferred in December to update the property survey. However, no discrepancy was found in the old survey according to the applicant. The new site plan submitted is shown in Exhibit C with a revised fence layout. The applicant has incorporated some pervious pavers around the pool, so now the total proposed lot coverage is 23.47%. Design Review Board met on November 3rd, 2020 and had following comment. Work with the city staff to reduce the impervious lot coverage. Staff response. Part 1. The existing lot coverage is already beyond the limit, that is 21%. The owner cannot add a pool without this variance. The proposed addition was 3.72%, which is reduced to 2.47% after meeting with the staff. This is the lowest increase in the lot coverage and closer to required 20%, therefore would not offend the spirit of the ordinance. The homes built in this subdivision have larger footprints and spacious driveways. The owner purchased the house around the time when changes in the lot coverage were made in Milton. The strict application of the ordinance would create unnecessary hardship. Therefore, this relief should be provided. Part 3. Relief, if granted, would not cause a detriment to the surrounding properties when the water quality and runoff is addressed through landscaping. Part 4. The public safety, health, and welfare are secure, and substantial justice is done by allowing a minimal increase to the lot coverage. Staff recommends approval of the variance with a condition to incorporate modified French drain or flow well system to control the water runoff as approved by the Community Development Department.
Are there any questions for staff? I invite the applicant to come forward. Please state your name and address for the record.
Good afternoon. My name is J.P. Duvall. This is my wife, Heather, and we're at 770 Cooper Sandy Cove, Milton.
Welcome.
Thank you.
I believe you've been before us,
yeah.
at least in part before, due to some advertising issues, so we apologize, and we're grateful to see you tonight. It sounds like from staff's report you've made some changes along the way. Would you care to emphasize any of those?
Yeah, we've definitely made some changes in order to try to accommodate the impervious to pervious coverage percentage, and we think we've been able to make some changes that are helpful in that regard. So we're looking at less than a 2.5% increase versus we were originally around a 4% increase.
And the primary mechanisms that you and staff worked on to change or to reduce that was the impervious pavers?
Yeah, so what we're...
Or pervious pavers, by
Yeah, so a big part of the plan was moving to having a grid design where we're able to actually have grass or sod in between the pavers. And then there was also, I believe, some efforts to reduce some of the square footage as well.
Okay. And in our last discussion around this, we wanted to ensure that you had identified the reserve septic field, I believe, in making sure that this project wouldn't cause a problem for a future septic need.
Yeah, I know we'd had a septic company come out and identify where the drain fields are and the tanks, and there was nothing that was in the area that would be compromised. If you look at the layout of where the lot is and the way the slope goes and where if there was ever any future expansion for septic would need to be, it would be pretty far removed from the pool area.
I don't see the actual field septic, current septic, or the
Yeah, it's not.
reserve septic noted on this drawing. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay, so we have one tank is in the front yard, and then the other, and I realize it's not noted on there, is on the extreme left side of the house, if you're facing the house from the street, whereas the pool is going to be oriented towards the back and the right. So again, it's on the opposite side of the property and on the side of the house set back towards the street.
Okay, and I understood from staff report that there were some changes made to your fence and fence layout?
Just the pool company on the original site plan had not drawn the fence correctly to incorporate in the upper left corner. There's a small piece of the land that kind of jots out.
Yeah, there's
and
a
there
pie
was a
shape that
fence
cuts
that goes
out.
around it as well, and they had not drawn that accurately.
Can I ask staff's help? I should have done this earlier. Can you put the drawing up on the screen?
I was thinking about that.
For the benefit of the public in particular, and we have quite a few folks who do join these meetings via Zoom. We all have, in fairness, I wanted to make sure everyone can see this.
They said they were going to make you do flow wells or chamber systems too?
That was not discussed when we met with the city on this. This suggestion that we add in French drains is new, but it makes sense because we're going to be very mindful of the water runoff that this would create. For our yard, we want to make sure that everything is kept well under control. We've got existing French drains today, so I'm sure that we would just add on and tie in.
I can just comment on that. Your last meeting. Let's see.
You probably want to go back to, sorry, Robin.
So at the last meeting, I think you all approved another case where our plan review engineer was very supportive of, in lieu of the flow well, doing a modified French drain, and that's where that comment came from staff, for them to add that to the construction of the development.
So either modified French drain or flow well as determined by an engineer.
Right. What if they want to submit something and then we would review it for approval? It's just.
I only asked because I heard it in the description, but I don't see it on the plan. That was when she read the description. There was discussion of that, but.
I mean, prior to approval, that could be one of your conditions.
I don't know that it necessarily needs to be. I just didn't see it on the plan was all. So I just was curious.
Well, I think it was in response. Yeah, it wasn't on the plan, but that was a recommendation.
Yeah, that's a recommendation we are doing if it's approved. They don't have it on the plan. That's why we are asking you to put a condition on it.
I see. Okay.
In regards to the septic, there can't be any pool approval until they come back to us for our building review with an approved septic from the county. So that would be all taken care of prior to the approval of the permit for the pool.
So we're discussing these items. We see these fairly frequently. We understand as a homeowner, you're only doing this one time. So things like runoff and managing runoff is a pretty customary item for you to work with your pool contractor with, and something the city would typically look to see, especially in this situation with a lot coverage item. The other is, as you just heard, in order to get a permit to move forward with the pool, through the health department, you'll need to secure drawings on the existing septic and the reserve septic fields to ensure that this project isn't encroaching into those. Right. So that's part of why you hear some of the line of questioning. You may not have encountered that yet with your pool contractor, but it's coming.
Okay.
Are there any additional questions for the applicant? Actually, I do have one more, and it's pertaining to your neighbors. I know we've had discussions in prior meetings, but for the sake of tonight's discussion, can you give us an understanding of neighbor support? Yours it looks like covered on three sides,
Yes.
Either side and behind. Can you give us a rundown of support or not?
There's actually, I think, 4 neighbors that actually border our fence line.
Correct, yep.
The Collicks are to our left, and I believe there was a letter in the agenda showing support. The Magruders don't border us, but they wrote a letter of support. The Nandy wrote the Gibbons wrote a letter of support. And then we had also provided in our original application signatures from all of those individuals, as well as on the back, our back line is a farm. Mr. Cook.
Yeah, Mr. Cook behind us that has a lot of
Cooks.
land back there. I mean,
Cooks and Deans.
He and his family, the Deans, they're supportive of this as well. He
And
would-
then,
yeah.
and then to our right,
We have a neighbor to the right of us that I guess is unhappy that a lot of the neighbors have pools and doesn't like the noise that children make and has complained about that.
Yes, so just,
that was the letter from the attorney.
we have that, and so for clarity for the record, we have letters of support from the Gibbons family, adjacent, Magruder family. which-
Magruder is just to the right of Jack.
Right.
That had the attorney.
And the Coolidge family is
Just
also
to the
in
left,
support.
yeah.
And then we have opposition, which is from November. The project has changed in form. I imagine they may be speaking tonight during public comment in opposition from the original plan. Okay.
And then we also, as I mentioned in the application, had signatures from all the ones that border, as well as Mr. Cook and Mr. Dean's signature from behind us.
And then the last item that I have, others may have more, is this subdivision, Cooper Sandy, does not have a public pool or community pool, rather.
It does
Correct.
not.
It's not a swim community.
And this property, it was originally over the 20% lot coverage as the ordinance changed since this property was developed. And it seemed to also, that change coincided with your ownership of this property as well.
Correct.
Correct.
Any additional questions for the applicant?
I just wanted to follow up on the support. I'm assuming you have an HOA there?
Yes.
Did you have a sign off by the HOA positive?
We do have the HOA approval, and that was emailed to the staff as well.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had.
As is customary, you heard the staff recommendations. There's just some exhibits in here in your packet, which further demonstrate the pavers, as you've noted on the plan, grass-jointed pervious travertine. That you're comfortable that's the product you're looking at going forward with, as was shown in Exhibit B?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? So the next step of the process is we're going to get public comment. If you'll have a chance to make a closing statement after public comment if you feel it's necessary. So you can have a seat for now.
Thank you.
So with that, I'll make note that the floor will be open for public comment for a total of 10 minutes for those in favor. Although accounting for the fact the applicant has presented, you only have got a few minutes of those interested in speaking in favor. And then up to 10 minutes for anyone wishing to speak in opposition. So first we'll start with anyone from the public that's interested in speaking in opposition? There is none? Hang on a second. We may have Zoom interest. I apologize. If there's anyone on Zoom who's wishing to speak and you'd like to make a comment during the public comment portion now, please raise your hand by clicking on the icon labeled Participants at the bottom of your screen, and then click the button labeled Raise Hand. If you're calling into the meeting on a phone, you can raise your hand by pressing *9, and the moderator will call your name, and you can then unmute yourself by clicking *6. Do we have anyone online?
No.
No. Do we have anyone here in person speaking in opposition? Is there anyone here or online wishing to speak in favor of this application?
No.
Okay. With that, you do have an opportunity. I'll make a note that you have an opportunity for a closing comment based on our questions, if there's anything else you wanted to emphasize. Otherwise, we'll be closing the public comment and moving to a motion. You're fine resting?
We're good. Thank you.
Okay. So I'll make a note that the public comment is closed. Actually, before I do that, are there any final questions to staff? Make a note that the public comment period is closed, and open the floor for a motion and a second.
I'll make a motion to approve V 2027-27 in accordance with the what is that?
You're fine.
In accordance with the Hilltop Pools drawing of November 16, 2020. This meets all 4 conditions for variance as outlined by the staff in their document. I would include the condition, also as mentioned by staff, to control the water runoff satisfactory to the Community Development Department.
I'll second that motion. Is there any discussion? I think, as you suggested, Don, staff did a nice job in categorizing the variance considerations, and the conditions also seem appropriate. All those in favor of approving V20-27 with conditions according to the site plan dated 11/16/2020 by Hilltop Pools, and also conditioned, I'm going to incorporate water runoff controls, either a modified French drain or flow well system, as approved by the Community Development Director. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. That motion passed unanimous. So good luck with your project. Please continue to work with staff. And thank you for working with staff to get us to this point. The next item on our agenda is D20-28. Thank you for posting that, Robin.
Whenever you want to refer to it, he'll switch.
Okay. The item is V20-28, 13230 Providence Road. Would staff please present?
V20-28, 13-30 Providence Road. Requested variances to allow the lot coverage for an AG1 zone property that fronts a public street to increase from 20% to 25%. The site is a 1.016 acre lot located on the west side of Providence Road. This property is zoned AG1 and is located in the rural Milton Overlay District. The minor plat for this property was approved in 2008. As per section 641141D1B, the lot coverage for the individual lot zoned AG1 shall not exceed 20% for the lots that front on public streets. The current impervious coverage on this lot is 19.26%. The applicant wants to build a pool in the rear yard that would increase the impervious coverage well beyond 20%. The applicant has worked with the city staff to reduce the proposed footprint. It is still above the permissible limit, and so the applicant is requesting a variance. Exhibit A shows the plan submitted by the applicant in October 2020. In November, the DRB advised our applicant to work with the Milton staff to reduce the lot coverage. The BZA heard the applicant in December and deferred the case to provide the owner more time to seek recommendations and further reduce the impervious area. The staff met with the owner in January and gave following recommendations. 1. Reduce the decking area around the pool. Use pervious pavers with the flow well system around the pool. Reduce the driveway coverage by partly removing excess or replacing with pervious surface. consider reducing scope of the project at this stage. For example, fireplace and seating around can be added later. Staff also recommended moving the pool to south a little since it is too close to secondary septic field shown in Exhibit D. The applicant came back with a revised plan shown in Exhibit B and C. It showed only reduced decking. With this revision, the lot coverage was 23%. The staff provided more feedback to the applicant. After that, a new plan was submitted with 21.62% lot coverage. It is shown in Exhibit E. The applicant is now proposing all grass around the pool and a fireplace is removed. On November 3rd, 2020, the DRB met and had following comment: work with the city staff to reduce the impervious lot coverage. Staff response, Part 1. The home and driveway is already covering more than 19% of the lot. The proposed design of a pool and a deck was elaborate in the beginning. However, the staff has worked with the applicant to reduce the proposed lot coverage significantly. Proposed lot coverage is very close to the acceptable limit now. Therefore, it would not offend the ordinance if the relief is granted. Part 2. The applicant brought this property with a conceptual pool design shown on the house plan. The house was already built at a maximum lot coverage. The location of this property on the Providence Road entails a deeper driveway for the safety. The strict application of the ordinance would create an unnecessary hardship. Therefore, this variance can be granted. Part 3. Relief, if granted, would not cause detriment to the surrounding properties because the runoff would be managed by the landscaping improvements. Part 4. The public safety, health, and welfare are secured because the increased lot coverage is minimum. The staff recommends approval of the variance.
Are there any questions for staff? I think we could go ahead and put the drawing up, and then if the applicant would please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
Matthew Titus, I'm the owner at 13230 Providence Road in Milton.
That's fine. Yeah, that's fine. If you would, some time has changed. Your project has changed over time as we've heard part of this before.
I'll skip all that stuff.
Well, but it's important that, that we are refreshed and understand what you're looking to achieve here.
Sure.
So, go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, the square footage has moved from, a proposed 24%, so 4% variance, to now we're at 21.62. It's a pool and a spa on grass at this point. We just kind of took a machete to the plans and said, we'll just put it on some grass and get our pool and let our kids enjoy it. We've got consent from all the neighbors and all of those things. We were actually the property owner that you had a question about the septic and all that. I think all that's been squared away. The septic stuff is, I think, on Exhibit D of the documents in front of you. So at this point, we think that the requested variance of 1.62% is modest. It's a modest ask, and I don't think that's what I'll say, and I'm here to answer any questions you all may have.
So it was noted by the staff report that this minor plat was approved in 2008. When did you become the owner of this property?
December 17.
Because it was between 2008 and 2017 that the ordinance changed. Is that correct, staff?
Correct, yes.
The ordinance changed to the 20% lot coverage around what year?
2014.
Around 2014?
2014, yeah.
Okay. So the biggest change then in terms of the design of the pool is eliminating the pool deck
Correct, and the fireplace.
and the fireplace.
Correct.
From the original plan, I saw that I estimated that the pool deck was about 777 square feet originally.
I think that's about right, yeah.
I pulled that off off Exhibit C. With that 777 of pool decking added back in, that brings you into the mid 23% range. Are you sure you want to go forward with a pool with no pool deck? And
These
set up
are
grass?
these are the wife's marching orders, so yeah, they're approved.
That would be probably a first for us to see that. Most people complain about the notion of pervious
Sure.
pavers in the sense that they can drag debris into the pool. Grass would certainly do that. And the reason I'm wanting clarification on that is we would like to not see another variance request down the road, or even worse, a violation down the road where a pool deck was put in place without a permit. So I'm leaving that door open for you if
Sure.
you want to reconsider inclusion of a pool deck.
No, I mean, these are the plans we're proposing.
Are they not, has staff discussed, again, water flow wells, that type of stuff for water control?
So, yes, we have talked about that, but we haven't plugged it into this particular plan because of the percentage cut and all of those things.
Yeah. I'm not, what I'm saying is you might be able to get the best of both worlds if you were to consider that. If you were to consider the flow wells, although they are expensive, I think we maybe even discussed this last time you were here.
Yeah,
But that would then help catch the water and decrease the impervious square footage that you're adding.
yeah.
Good mitigation tool.
Correct.
Yeah, the cost per se was not really the issue. It was more just, we felt like getting the decking to where we wanted it was kind of a moving target. And so we just decided, let's get the pool built and just enjoy it.
Okay. Are there any other questions or clarification that's from staff or the applicant before I open for public comment?
I've got a question for the applicant. Would you be comfortable if there was a recommendation, well, not a recommendation, but a request that said that you had to have French drains or flow well system for this pool?
I mean, that's, my take on that is, I'm an attorney, so I review it kind of from that perspective, like what's the point of the ordinance, the section and all of that, and what is the purpose behind that stipulation. So when I read the code section, I looked at it as an ordinance designed to protect the public through its public roads. So it's designed to protect Providence Road. And to the extent there's runoff to the other neighbors, I think Milton has already answered that question, that 25% is a rule of thumb as to how we approach that. My neighbors are not entitled, or the neighbors' trees are not entitled to more protection than anything else. This statute, the code, exists for Providence. And in my mind, the city of Milton has not proffered any evidence, really, that runoff or mitigation is necessary to deal with runoff towards Providence Road. I mean, to me, the issue is a relatively narrow one. So I would, obviously, if that happens, right? But it would be an objection that I would raise because I don't think it's relevant to the issue of what the code is trying to protect.
I don't disagree with you, but we're just here to interpret the 20% rule. So
Yeah.
all we can say is you're over 20% and you haven't ventured down this avenue of mitigation as far as the water goes. So with you just saying because you don't want to, basically, or you don't feel it's necessary, you'd have to have like an engineer drawing that shows it's not necessary. Does that make sense? Or that the topography of your land doesn't pitch to your neighbors? Or you'd have to come back with evidence that proves your point. You just can't say, I just don't feel it's necessary, because then we say, well, we do, and it's 20%.
No, I get that. I guess what I'm saying, last time we were here, we talked about the topography of our yard and all of that stuff. And I skipped those points today, but, and how the property adjacent to us is trees and it's already unbuildable, and that'd be where the runoff is. So I hear what you're saying. I mean, the third point talks about the public good and surrounding properties, and I think that that's relevant if there's going to be some argument that there's going to be a significant amount of runoff to these areas. But like I said, I think the thrust of the code is talking about Providence Road. That's why our property is encumbered differently than other properties. In light of the topography of our property and the location of the pool and how the hill flows, no, I don't have an engineering drawing to say that there's not going to be any runoff to Providence Road, but I think, common sense would say that there's not decking. The topography flows away from Providence Road, not towards it.
So I'd like to clarify the basis for your pushback on that item. The impervious setback in water runoff is a very sensitive topic, and especially in the city of Milton. Stormwater management, it ends up resulting in impacts to neighboring properties, which is a consideration for us here, and ends up in our streams. So that could be added silt and added, what do you call it when you make something toxic?
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Fertilizers and that type of
Yes,
stuff.
so it is a very sensitive topic here, and it's not pertaining to Providence Road. It's pertaining to our environment and surrounding properties.
But respectfully, that to me would make sense if we're talking about 25% to 30%. But
it's not an arbitrary number either. There is quite a body of evidence from stormwater management at state level. And I know this because I'm also working on our comprehensive plans and have dealt with this in that regard as well. We're not here to judge on that, but we are here to enforce what we think are the ordinance as well as mitigating factors based on the spirit and intent of the ordinance.
correct.
And so impacts to surrounding properties in the case of adding additional impervious surface would be additional runoff. That's the basis of why I think Hodge and Jason are brought
And I
up.
get that. My point is that the default rule in Milton, as I understand it, I may be wrong. I don't do this area wrong. My understanding is the default rule in Milton is 25%. So the people, so to speak, through the legislative process has said 25% is by default an acceptable amount. There is an exception that we're talking about now for homes that abut a major roadway. My understanding is that that was created to protect those roads from runoff. Now, if we were talking about exceeding kind of the default rules, then we talk about the encumbrances that are in additional encumbrances on my property. My property faces a unique encumbrance because Providence Road is important, and that makes sense.
But I'm confused because you said money wasn't the issue, and I'm in favor to vote in your favor to give you the variance with the exception of water management. But I'm just questioning or confused why you're objecting to a stormwater, a flow well, a chamber, any type of water management. Why are you so strongly opposed to that?
I've conceded if that's what happens, that's what happens. Obviously, we'll do it. My point is that I don't believe it's a necessary condition to place given our request on the variance. I think it's just a saddled expense that's not appropriate for this plan. But that's just my take on it.
And I hear what you're saying, but you got to have there's got to be four factors that prove your hardship. And if just not willing to do one of them, that doesn't categorize. We're trying to make this work for you, but you got to help us help you, and that, you can't.
Well, I haven't said I'm not willing to do it. I'm willing to do it. But if the question is, do I have an objection to it? The answer is yes. And it's because the way I read the statute, it's to protect Providence Road, and the neighbors have all consented. The other property, there's been no indication of excess runoff or anything like that. So again, it's not an issue of not doing it or anything like that. It's just an issue of, do I believe there's a counter argument to that being a stipulation or a condition, and I think there is.
Well, if you hold one second. From a staff standpoint, in terms of the next steps, if we were to approve, this applicant would have to, would they be subject to plan review, and would that include stormwater management and runoff management as part of what they would need to satisfy with staff?
So, because it depends on what you end up recommending. So in this situation, they've gone to the bare bones of what impervious area they have. I think it's just over 21%. I'm not sure that would push them over, that we would require them to do any kind of flow wells or anything like that. I mean, we'd make sure that that the water is being directed through grading and all that and stays on the property and doesn't flow onto somebody else's property. But unless you put a condition on that, in addition to having basically no deck, that you would want additional mitigation.
Mitigation for runoff. In this
Right.
case, they are
Because-
changing some grading for the pool area.
Right. I mean, maybe you could do a condition if you want to, if warranted, further mitigation, it would be upon the decision of this plan review engineer. But I'm not so sure that, usually we do mitigation when they're, like in the previous case, they were around 22 or about 23 and change percent, and they had some areas that were impervious, and so that was the reasoning of wanting to put that condition on.
Right.
So I think I think what y'all were trying to discuss was, hey, if he wanted to add some impervious area and add the mitigation, then you might be open to that.
Right.
I think that was the direction you were
That was
going,
what
instead
started
of
this
just
conversation.
adding mitigation to what he has now.
Yeah, I feel bad he gets a pool, no deck, so it's like, well, hey,
I'm very concerned that I don't know why you wouldn't want to get the right way. I don't know why you wouldn't want to just get the pool decking, put in some French drains, and get it the way it should be. Because I could see this being a problem in the future. If you sell your house and we'll get new people coming in and saying, oh, I want to get decking, or, and it's just, I don't feel you're really, you have a nice house, you have a nice community. I would think you'd want a nice pool with the decking and all of it that goes with it. So it's just confusing to us that, we're willing to, help you get what you want. You just kind of have to help us, get what we need to satisfy, the current ordinances in the city. So,
And it's not appeasing us. But really, I think more what Ms. Keller said was, this leaves the door open for the next owner to potentially come in and want another variance to come back in and put in a pool deck. And then there's more
But that always
impact to the ground again.
Right.
So that's part of what we're thinking ahead to as well.
Yeah, look, I mean, I don't know the answers to those questions, right? I don't know what the next owners will do or anything like that. The request is request, and I'm not saying we certainly won't. We'll abide by what you all do. But if the question is, do I have an objection to that being a stipulation? The answer is no, I do, and it's based off of the arguments I outlined.
Well, and oftentimes we don't have to get into a debate about interpretation of wording. That's what engineers are for. They specialize in this, and we could just simply say we recommend that, and engineers review these plans to determine if any stormwater mitigation is necessary.
Yeah, and I'm
And
sure
there,
you
it's not a
understand.
matter of interpretation of an ordinance or anything, it's
We just
an
have to
expert.
be consistent. You know,
Right.
these are the ordinances, this is what we have to do to abide by those ordinances. And, you know,
Okay, is there any additional questions? Any additional points you care to make?
I mean, but I do think that's a fair point to say, well, then if that's not the if you object to that stipulation, which we don't have, we can still put it on there, but say, hey, we won't put that stipulation, but we'll just say, hey, if you can present an engineered drawing or an engineered stamp drawing that says you're not going to be causing water runoff on your neighbor's property or the road. And I mean, this is going to help you too, because that 2% probably has very little impact on anybody's property. But let's say the neighbor all of a sudden has an erosion problem. They come back and blame you, and it probably wasn't your problem, but the fact that you didn't do any water mitigation and now you've increased your impervious area, it's just a red flag for them. So, I mean, you know, something to think about.
Okay.
All right, if there's no further questions, we'll take public comment. You'll have a chance to make a closing statement. So, in moving to public comment, again, anyone on Zoom who's interested in speaking, please raise your hand by clicking on the icon at the bottom of your screen labeled participant and click on the button raise hand. If you're joining by phone, you can press *9. And then once the moderator calls you, you can press *6 to unmute. Do we have anyone here to speak we have very limited time to speak in favor. The applicant spent quite a bit of time. Up to 10 minutes in opposition and just a few minutes in favor. Starting with anyone interested in speaking in opposition. None?
None.
Is there anyone here wishing to speak or online in favor of this application?
None.
Okay. You have a chance to make any closing statements. You're fine deferring those. So with that, I'll make a note that the public comment is closed. Well, before I do that, is there any final questions from this board to staff? Make a note that the public comment is closed, and I'll open the floor for a motion and a second. I'm going to make a motion to deny V20-28. And I'll wait to see if there's a second before we get into any discussion.
Second.
I have concerns about the 4 conditions that we have in terms of the potential impact to neighbors, as well as the likely impact of hearing another variance request in the future based on this being what I determined to be an incomplete product. So that was my rationale. There's perhaps other ways of thinking about making it work, but that's my concern.
Yeah, my concern is in line with yours in that there isn't really a pool deck here. Seems like it's somewhat incomplete, and we're running the risk of potentially down the road seeing an additional request for a variance related to a pool deck. And we're already over that threshold right now. We talked about French drains and flow wells and so forth, and that didn't really feel like it was addressed, I guess, at this point. And then coming down the road with additional impervious surfaces kind of exasperates that.
The last point I'd make is I did encourage and I would continue to encourage the applicant to rethink this notion about the pool decking as well as some of the mitigation options that I think this board would favor.
What's his option? I mean, I hate to deny him because everyone should be able to have the right to put a pool in, but what is his option if he was to say, if we denied this and then he decided he doesn't have an option?
Correct. That would actually prohibit him. There would be a waiting period, right? Correct, staff?
Yeah.
Right, it would have to be, you'd have to wait 6 months
Or he could
before they
reapply.
come back again
for the same variance.
for the same,
Correct.
yeah.
I'm not really in support of the denial, to tell you the truth. I thought where we were going to go was to, the applicant doesn't like it, but I thought we were going to maybe put a condition on here to say, we'll approve it, but you're going to meet all the conditions to take care of that, whatever it is, less than 2% flow. And whether we told him we had to do specific design or whether we left it to the staff, because the applicant did do quite a bit of changes already. I mean, it's not like he, ignored working with the staff. So I'm just a little surprised. I would have thought that we would have put the condition in and approved it.
I would agree, but I'll just say this openly since we're not directing it. A hydrology study is going to cost probably a lot more than a flow well or a chamber or a French drain system. So the engineering portion of it could be more expensive than just willing to do that. But I agree. I don't think as is, he doesn't meet all the requirements or STIP as a hardship. Because I feel like there's options there that he's just not willing to accept or take. But if we enforce them, then that would give him the option to either conform or not do it.
Is there any further discussion? That we're now in motion, public comments closed. As I said, I would prefer if this would be deferred and rethought by the applicant. Or to Don's point, that there's conditions to mitigate what are some of our concerns. So part of why we have discussion is to understand the viewpoints.
I mean, I'd be willing to make a motion for approval, but with conditions that are those in which we're discussing, which is either hydrology study or, which is a lot to do for a 1% increase, or a flow well system or a chamber system. Also be engineered.
I would tend to agree with that as well, but we have to get through the first vote, right?
Yeah.
In lieu of the engineered study, how would you feel about leaving that to the community development directors?
Yeah.
Right, if I could interject, I think, I think I suggested that it be approved pursuant to approval by the plan review engineer of the department, if it's deemed needed, because it may not, other than, usually we have our most issues when people don't grade their property correctly and water sheets off onto the next property. And I think that's, whether you have 5% flow or 25% flow, that's a concern. But that's something that can easily be looked at with the construction drawings and topography and how it's going to, the grading, and our department can determine what would be needed, if anything, other than, like I mentioned, properly graded in such a way to keep the water. And if there needs to be additional flow well or modified French drain, then we can add that into the requirement for the approval of the permit.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second on the floor, which we'll need to satisfy first before we would entertain anything else. So with that, that's a motion to deny. All those in favor of denial say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Floor is open for another motion and a second.
Can I just confirm that was 1 vote in favor and 4 votes opposed?
Correct.
And then who voted in the
Patel?
negative? Okay, or in the
There was
positive
one
for
in
negative.
favor of denial.
Right. Support of the negative. Okay.
So I'll attempt to make a motion. Todd, I might need your help. So I will make a motion to approve B20-28, 13230 Providence Road, based off the site plan dated
I don't see a date on
I
it.
don't think that is dated.
Is this plan referenced in the packet as an exhibit?
Yes, Exhibit E.
D.
B as in boy?
Last one.
D as in dog?
Thought it was,
Yeah, it might be E because this is the last exhibit.
E? Exhibit E. There you go.
Yes,
it's E.
it's E.
So,
Okay, so Exhibit D,
E.
no,
E,
E as
excuse
an
me. Echo.
elephant.
E is an echo, with the condition that they work with community development on proper stormwater management.
Okay.
That,
Yes. Community Development Director.
Want to get a little bit more detail on what the goal of proper stormwater
well,
management
just
is.
keep consistency, because I think the last case was almost identical to this one, and we required them do this exact thing. So I don't feel it's fair that and I think the verbiage was similar. So just trying to keep consistency with the hardship, which is when you exceed the 20% impervious, that you work with stormwater or community development for your stormwater management. And whatever necessary means that would be to control the stormwater.
But to,
So in the
do you think?
previous one, it was recommends approval with the condition to incorporate a modified French drain or flow well system to control the water runoff as approved by the community development director.
Correct.
So you're just taking the chance that it wouldn't be required based upon this
If the
small
community
amount.
development feels like the plan he presents isn't necessary, then I would be okay with accepting that.
okay.
You know,
So the language, but we don't have a second yet here.
right.
That's correct. But we're trying to get the language.
Trying to
of
get the lingo
actual-
right. So
Work with Community Development Director on necessary stormwater mitigation such as flow well or modified
Say
French
to
drain.
protect
the surrounding properties.
surrounding properties. That would give it just some basis for what they're judging their approval on.
If required.
You still approve whether or not it's needed or not.
Right.
Yeah. So
How about this, subject to Community Development Director determination whether stormwater mitigation is necessary, such as flow well or modified French drain to protect surrounding properties. So it's subject to Community Development Director determination whether stormwater mitigation is necessary.
to protect.
Do I have to say
It's your
it again?
motion.
I was going to say, do I have to say that again?
No, I've got it, I'm writing it.
Okay.
But
So,
that's your motion?
That's my motion.
Okay. So two-part per site plan, Exhibit B, and the condition that it's subject to Community Development Director determination whether stormwater management mitigation is necessary, such as a flow well or modified French drain to protect surrounding properties.
Correct.
I just don't see this labeled as exhibit.
So this is not, except it's in our packet in a smaller form
This one right here.
as Exhibit E.
Okay, gotcha. And it says that on there?
It says Exhibit E, which is page 12 of 12.
Gotcha. As long as you guys see it.
So I'll second that motion. And to restate, the motion would be to approve V20-28 per the site plan noted as Exhibit E in the packet, page 12 of 12, conditioned on the subject to Community Development Director determination whether stormwater management mitigation is necessary, such as flow well or modified French drain to protect surrounding properties. Is there any discussion? So,
This,
go ahead, Hodge.
I think this motion addresses the concerns of runoff, et cetera. We're fairly close to the limits, but it allows the city staff to kind of take over and really figure out if it's needed or not needed. So I think we're addressing it both from the property owner standpoint as well as protecting the public with this motion.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was to raise that point as well, Hodge. I believe staff noted points regarding our 4 variance considerations, which I think are consistent with what we've made this determination or this motion based on. Any further discussion? All those in favor of approval with the 2 conditions, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion passed unanimous. The next item on our agenda is V21-01, 210 Pinehurst Walk.
So this application, this application is withdrawn. After staff meeting, we have found a solution for them that doesn't require any variance.
Bravo. Kudos. Thank you to staff. So the next item on our agenda then would be V21-02, 13195 Freemanville Road.
V2102, 13195 Freemanville Road.
Excuse me, do they need to make a vote to withdraw it? The
Oh,
item?
yeah, do we?
Was it withdrawn timely?
Yes. Timely?
I mean timely.
Before advertisement?
No.
No.
No? Okay, then yes, you would need to.
I'd make a motion to accept the applicant's request for withdrawal on item V21-01, 210 Pinehurst Walk.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of accepting the applicant's withdrawal, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion to withdraw passed unanimous. So then I'd ask staff to present V21-02, 13195 Freemanville Road. And I thank you, Robin, for putting the plan up again.
V2102, 13195 Freemanville Road. Requested variance is to allow a new barn to be located less than 200 feet from the property lines. And second one is to allow the new barn to be located in the front yard of the property. The site is a 6.96 acre lot located on the east side of Freemanville Road. This property is zoned R2 residential and is located in rural Milton Overlay District. This property is a flag lot with minimum required 35 feet road frontage. Exhibit E shows the existing condition on the subject property. Currently, there is a house with a driveway and a pool. Also, there is an existing patch of plain and clear ground sprouted from the driveway in the middle of the property. This is the proposed location of the barn that would be housing animals. Per section 461(1)(b), the barn in R2 zoning district is required to be located 200 feet from the property line. The proposed barn is located less than 200 feet from the property line on the side and the front. Per section 462I, the barn can be located in the rear or side yard, and this barn is proposed in the front yard. Therefore, these 2 variances are requested. All the existing structures on this property are in compliance with the zoning code. Exhibit B shows the soil and drainage area on the property. It also shows 2 tennis courts and an addition to the house that the applicant is pursuing separately. The concept look of the barn is presented in Exhibit C. Design Review Board met on January 5th, 2021 and had following comments. DRB recommends approval. Staff response, Part 1. For R2 zoning district, the distance of an accessory structure housing animals is required to be a minimum of 200 feet from the property lines. The intent of the 200 feet distance is to allow sufficient setback from all property lines. Since the neighboring properties are of large sizes, the barn will be more than 200 feet from all the surrounding houses at the proposed location. Therefore, a relief, if granted, would not offend the spirit of the ordinance. Part 2. Although the property is 6.96 acres, there is a water body on the east part of the property with a minimum undisturbed buffers requirement. The property is mostly wooded in with a few exceptions, including the proposed location for the barn. The property itself is less than 400 feet wide. To maintain 200 feet from all property lines is not possible. These conditions, not caused by the applicant, creates a hardship. Therefore, this variance can be granted. Part 3. This setback requirement for the barn housing animal in R2 zone is greater than many surrounding properties that are zoned AG1, where setback requirement is 100 feet. Relief, if granted, would not cause a detriment to surrounding properties because the proposed site maintains sufficient vegetative buffer. Part 4. The applicant is selecting a spot that was previously cleared, padded, and meant for building a structure. Public safety, health, and welfare are secured, and the substantial justice is done by selecting a location that minimizes further environmental damage. The staff recommends approval of the variance with a condition that the barn's opening to face interior part of the property and not the nearest property line.
The surrounding, this is a question for staff. The surrounding properties, are they all also zoned R2?
Some of them are, but let me bring up a map to tell you exactly which ones are. I believe to the south they are, but to the north they aren't. But let me double check on that.
Okay. And the reason I ask that is the R2 zoning, different than AG1, has a greater distance requirement for accessory structures from 100 feet for AG1 to 200 feet for the R2. However, this is nearly a 7-acre lot.
So all the properties, the small,
To the north are,
yeah, close to Freemanville, the properties fronting Freemanville are all AG1.
so let me go ahead and.
Which we could see from
Yeah,
page
let
2
me
of
get it
7.
here, yeah, let me,
And so those properties abutting Freemanville Road or AG1, they're actually look to be smaller in size than this R2 property.
it's kind of a mishmash, you'll see. Parcel comes up. That part is. And then R2 is actually also goes over to Bethany Road. Oh, mishmash.
So the R2 is what is in orange?
Yellow or that. whatever.
Yellow, okay.
And then the green, or what looks like green is AG1.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying that.
I have a question. Maybe it's just my eyes. Somehow I am not seeing in these drawings exactly the location of this new barn. I see other things that says new,
On this version,
new deck, new other things.
it's on the big one.
It's on the big one. It wasn't the most precise. So what I have up on the screen is a general, it's not even the entire parcel, but you can see, I know, but then it doesn't show the barn.
But this is where the.
Yeah, okay. but it's like putting pieces together. So this is the approximate location of the barn on this plot. Okay, and then if you go to here, which is like a blow up, then that's the exact location of the barn where my finger is.
This little drive, this is the driveway coming off on the small site plan
Right.
for the barn?
Yeah.
But there's no drawing, there's no square
Yeah,
barn.
exactly.
Okay.
And just to reiterate, it's not a barn for animals, it's,
It is a barn.
it is, I'm sorry.
This
it
one is,
I'm
yeah.
confusing with somebody else.
Yes. And this is, I think it's important to show page 2 or to reflect on page 2. It's a heavily wooded lot. This area that they're proposing is cleared and level for the proposed barn. Back of the property butts to a pond or a lake.
Correct.
Okay, any additional questions for staff before we get to the applicant?
I have a question. Are you saying that this proposed barn, would, the property line is with the pond?
No.
Oh,
The rear of the property behind the home is a lake.
yeah.
That's part of what, so the fact that there's a cleared area in a heavily wooded lot that's level in the front of the house brings us to this variance request. Putting it in the rear of the house would not be practical,
Gotcha.
given the topography in the lake.
Do we have any letters of support or against? I don't see anything in our packet. Oh, okay.
We'll talk with the applicant on that. Let's ask the applicant that.
I was asking staff. because
No,
I didn't see
we did not receive any yet.
Okay.
All right, with that, I'd ask the applicant to come forward and share with us more about your proposed project.
Good evening. I'm Walter Behrman, the homeowner.
Okay. Address?
13195 Freemanville Road.
Thank you.
It's kind of a very unique piece of property where it's impossible to get within 200 feet of the property line. So that's the first problem we run into. Second off, putting in the backyard is impossible because we live on a lake and that would put us into the lake to make it happen. The location we picked out, that little stub of the driveway, that's been existing for many, many years, and that's all kind of hard surface through there. Plus the topography there is flat and level. It's almost like made for it. It's actually a perfect location for it. It's very small impact on trees. If we tried to move it to another part of the property, we'd destroy the property. The natural flow of water is not through that area. It's down the middle of the property. And again, the trees are not in that location as well. There's a few that are going to be impacted, but not many. Anywhere else in the property, we're going to be, taking down 40, 50 trees to make it happen, which would be silly. I did talk to both my neighbors on both sides. I did bring one letter from one neighbor. The other neighbor said, hey, if they have a problem, I'll get you something. Don't worry about it.
Can you give that letter to staff so we have that for the record?
Absolutely.
Thank you. And as you mentioned, that neighbor, is that the neighbor closest to the property line?
Correct. I've spoken to both neighbors. The one that's closer to the property line, we actually spoke in depth for about half an hour. Totally in favor. She loves everything we've been doing there, and no issues whatsoever.
And then the letter is from?
That's the other neighbor.
To the other side or to the front?
Correct.
To the other side?
Correct.
Okay. All right, thank you.
I think I know this property, and doesn't this neighbor's driveway, doesn't it go up and hook and go right by the property line?
It does. It's their driveway from the barn is still going to be about 80 feet away.
Right, so they're not going to care to drive by farm animals or anything like that?
Nothing at all. Yeah, we went through it and they were fine with it.
All right, what else do you want to add about your project?
Well, I mean, because of the zoning, there's no other way other than get a variance. We're kind of stuck on this one. And I have having some background in building and developing and stuff like that, this is the perfect location for it. And this is minimal impact. And And as you can tell, we love trees, so we really were careful on how we picked it out. There's no issues with anything to do with the main house or septics or anything like that. We're hundreds of feet away from everything.
You have had some drawings here, and I'm specifically referring to, and maybe staff can help pull this up, the one where you're locating the barn as a footprint.
Okay?
And it looks like there's been some engineering work done in terms of dry wells and such.
Dry wells in the sense of?
It says right here,
well,
or the downspouts for the barn.
Okay,
Is that true?
correct.
Okay. As you heard from maybe some of the prior cases, stormwater is certainly something that we pay attention to. It looks like you've already done some preliminary work with an engineer on this.
Correct. And the natural flow right now, it's already a hard surface. So we're really not changing anything, and anything near the lake, from the lake, we're probably 350 feet of natural filtration all the way down. So there's the chance of any runoff hitting there is basically zero.
But your plan is to have gutters and downspouts connected to the dry well.
Absolutely.
For the barn itself.
Absolutely.
Okay. The other clarifying question I had for you is the footprint is 40 by 45, and it's my understanding you have a concept of what you're trying to build in terms of design.
Correct. We have a picture of the idea we're looking to do. That should be in the packet.
It is. It's for reference. It's page 7 of 7, Exhibit C. Does the footprint of 40 by 45 give you what you need for that concept?
Correct.
It does. Okay.
Yes.
This concept also shows. It looks like
Pass through.
pass through. Thanks for the word.
We're probably not going to do the pass through. Although there is an outside chance because the neighbor to the one side, we're in talks on buying their property. So if that happens, then we'll probably do that down the road. But for now, let's just keep it no back. We won't drive all the way through at this point. No.
All right. And the reason I'm also clarifying that is there was a staff recommended condition for it not to open to the adjacent property.
And that's fine. We don't have to do that.
Okay.
Yeah. And that was just, this was the best picture for the front elevation we can get and the best view and the thing we were looking for. Within, 99% of what we're looking to do, but we never plan on having that to go all the way through. If we did end up buying our next door neighbor's house, then maybe down the road, but right now, no.
Just a clarification from staff. Whatever we were to decide today, this would be subject to architecture review?
Correct, yes.
Why does the secondary structure larger than 1,500 square feet not come into play in the front?
The secondary
I mean,
structure.
accessory structure, I
That's
guess.
guest house.
So it doesn't. It can be a barn in the front. I thought it was secondary structure. Period.
Cabana.
Yeah, I know what you're asking.
Oh, that's the other one. Let's see.
We have a limitation on accessory guest
There are
houses
not,
being greater than 1,500 square feet. Accessory structures need to be secondary to the main structure.
Right. I mean, we don't have a limitation to the
Gotcha.
number of accessory structures, just the location. And, I mean, obviously, if you have a covered riding arena, it's going to be bigger than 1,500 square feet. That's typically a guest house that is specifically called out. So,
But the accessory structure is limited to being less than the primary structure.
Yeah, I mean-
in size. In
Or
this
use.
case, you've got quite a large home, and it looks like you're making it larger.
Correct.
Correct?
Correct. It's all one floor. It's a ranch. That's why it looks so big. It's not it's just.
Footprint, it's big.
No, it is. It's.
Does that answer your question?
It does. Yes, it does.
Any other clarifying questions or detailed questions for staff or the applicant?
This smaller diagram we have, that's just informational or something in general? Because it's superseded, I guess, by these larger drawings. We can't make a variance based on this. It's got all kinds of other stuff in here. Other new activities. new garage, new stone wall. I mean, is this an older drawing that is just
Yeah.
informational purposes or something? It shows new structures is what I'm
Okay.
saying. And I don't understand, I mean, we're not approving any of that. So we
No,
can't
no, just the-
reference this site plan.
Correct, just the barn, correct.
So are we okay that we have, okay, as long as everything's
Well,
called
that's a
out in
question for staff.
C3.
Is, in terms of, we don't have an overall site plan that's noting the specific location of the proposed barn. We have a detailed zoom-in view of the
Correct.
location, but not in context to the overall site plan.
Correct. But you can utilize the zoomed in with the location and the distance from the property line to be part of the condition, because he has it measured not, to be X number of feet from the property line.
And the footprint being by 40 by 45,
Right.
and the orientation to the existing hard surface
Right,
drive or access.
right.
I think that's what you were getting to.
Yeah, I agree. It's not the most optimal set of drawings. So we'll be careful in the future to make sure that applicants submit. He has a lot of information, and I think because he did a lot of his engineering and different
Yeah.
planning ahead of time, and then, it was almost too much information in a way, but not exactly what we usually expect. And so I apologize. We'll make sure we get more exacting information or precise to the request, so.
So in referencing any site plan, we should be referencing the large one and the date, which will give staff enough direction in terms of the orientation and the property.
Sounds good.
Any other questions? Before I open for public comment? Okay, you can have a seat. Thank you. You'll have a chance to make a closing statement if necessary. Is there any public comment here in person,
No,
online, Zoom?
no.
Wow, we're light on public comment tonight. And would you care to make any closing points, Mr. Fairman? You're fine without? Is there any final questions to staff or the applicant before I close the public comment? All right, I'll make a note that public comment is closed, and I'll open the floor for a motion and a second.
I'll make a motion to approve B2102 to allow a new barn to be located less than 200 feet from the property line.
In part two,
And I'm referencing the...
also to allow it to be located in the front yard.
Also, yes, also to allow it to be located in the front yard of the property. Per the site plan dated 11/30/2020 with the engineer of Vincent M. Gambatis, if I said that correctly. Additionally, within that site plan that we're maintaining that setback from the side property line of 35 feet, I believe is what it shows here, and a footprint to be no larger than 40 by 45 feet. Also, the ingress, egress to the barn should face the interior of the property.
Anything else? I'll second that. So to restate, the motion was to approve per the site plan dated 11/30/2020, which references a 35-foot setback from the side property line and a footprint no larger than 40 by 45 feet. In additional condition, that ingress and egress for the barn shall face the interior of the property. From a discussion, any discussion? I do think staff also did a nice job in outlining our four considerations. This being an R2 property certainly has a little bit of an interesting twist in terms of the 200-foot requirement, even though the property itself is 7 acres, and adjacent are also large tracts of land. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion passed unanimous. Congratulations, and continue to work with staff on your next steps. Next item on our agenda is V21-03, 960 Landrum Road. Would staff present?
V2103, 960 Landrum Road. Requested variance is to allow the pool to be located within the front yard and to allow the cabana to be located in the front yard. The site is a 5.5 acre lot located on north side of the Landrum Road. This property is zoned AG1 and is located in the rural Milton Overlay District. Property is heavily wooded with Cooper Sandy Creek as the northern property line. Exhibit A shows the location of proposed pool and cabana on the property. Exhibit B shows a close-up of proposed pool and cabana with respect to the house. Exhibit C shows the state water body, that is Cooper Sandy Creek, and the required undisturbed impervious buffer on the property. For section 1609B1, a pool can be located in the rear or side yard. Since the location and access to the pool is in the front yard, this variance is requested. Similarly, per section 416I, an accessory structure can be located in the rear side yard. The proposed cabana is located in the front yard. Therefore, this variance is requested. On January 5th, 2021, DRB met and had following comments. DRB recommends including an aerial view showing the wooded site that is shown in Exhibit D now. DRB also recommended approval. Staff response, Part 1. The intent of the ordinance for allowing pool in the rear or side is to make the front of the house prominent. The house on this property is shaped in such a way that the main entrance is further away from the front, whereas the garage is projecting outwards towards the front significantly. This has created an additional space that is in the front of the main door and side of the garage. The pool and the cabana is proposed in this location. The proposed pool and cabana, although in the front, can be hidden from Landrum Road with the existing trees and tactful landscaping. Therefore, relief, if granted, would not offend the spirit of the ordinance. Part 2. Although the property contains 5.5 acre Cooper Sandy Creek's required 50-foot undisturbed buffer and 25-foot impervious setback that covers most of the backyard. Part of the backyard close to the house is reserved for the septic systems. The applicant has made an attempt to avoid these areas, and so there is very limited area left for building a pool. These exceptional situations for conditions recommend that the literal or strict application of the ordinance would create an unnecessary hardship. Therefore, the variance can be granted. Part 3. Relief, if granted, would not cause a substantial detriment to the public good and surrounding properties with the proper screening and lighting. Part 4. The public safety, health, and welfare are secured, and a substantial justice is done by avoiding the undisturbed buffer in the backyard. Staff recommendations. Staff recommends approval of the variance with the following conditions. 1. Landscaping for screening to be approved by the city arborist. Pool barrier to be installed with 4-board equestrian fence. lighting at the pool and the cabana to comply with night sky ordinance.
Are there any questions for staff?
Question.
Go ahead.
Can you clarify how we determine the frontage of the road?
So it's a, if you look at this, I'm just gonna, so this is the house, side, entry garage, as you can see, as you come off of, this is Landon Road. Come through the driveway, and then it's a side entry. How we determined what the front yard was front elevation of the primary part of the house. Here where the pen is, everything toward the stream. Front is anything toward Landrum Road from the pen. This L shape, this portion of the garage is not considered, it's within the front yard, but it's attached. And so therefore, because this plane here where the pen is, pool is in front of the, between pen or the front of the house in Landrum Road. So that's how we determine the front. So,
Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions for staff? All right. With that, I'd ask the applicant to share with us your plans. Please state your name and address.
Good evening. I'm Scott McMichael. I'm the applicant at 960 Landrum Road. Staff has stolen all of my thunder tonight by their presentation of all the finer points. I think they've laid that out beautifully. It still reads weird when I think about having a front yard pool. You know, go to Walmart, pop one up right in the front yard. But the way that the property is shaped, we thought that we were operating under a side yard pool through interpretation originally, but through consult with staff and the city attorney, we felt it was more prudent. Just based on the interpretation that it should be indeed considered variance. So what is not as obvious by the views that you have is the elevation of the property. It slopes dramatically into that floodplain, and so there really is very limited options on the 5.5 acres of where the pool could situate and still be either at main level or terrace level and not somewhere floating in between, which would be a bad investment on our part. But with that, I'll open it up for any questions. I think the case has been well documented there.
Well, you made a number of points in your letter of appeal regarding the topography, the fact that there is a Cooper Sandy Creek be in the rear of the yard. Although this project still would appear, in moving it to the side, actually moves it further out of that stream. In terms of runoff, it's 200 feet away, the project. Mm-hmm. As well, looks like it's 100 feet off the road.
Correct. So it is geometrically situated such that there are no other encumbrances other than it is in front of the front door of the home. And all other restrictions around. So, for example, you guys know the rules better than I do, but there's not an absolute restriction for moving into that 200-foot buffer, but we would be into an additional engineering. It would require removal or displacement of existing septic additional down trees. It seemed like we were moving actually away from the purpose of the ordinance to begin with more impact to environment.
And your rear of your property slopes
Sort of straight down, yeah, to the floodplain.
heavily towards the creek, as well as you noted, there is a 100-year floodplain noted in the rear of your property as well.
That is also true, yeah.
Okay.
So
I
we
think
have plenty
at
of
first-
runoff.
At first readings, people would react and say putting a pool in
What
your
the
front
heck?
yard would be a little bit unusual, but in considering those other pieces and how it is, Georgia Classic Pools has designed it to your primary residence is interesting.
There is also, and staff pointed it out in their recommendations, so obviously landscape will be required, but behind that concrete driveway, you can see those rippled lines. There's a good amount of fall. So it really is, the pool is actually sort of tucked behind the driveway, if you will. So by the time the natural rock and landscape structures are put in place, we don't intend it to be visible from Landrum in any way.
It looks to be, from the topo on your plan, about a 15-foot drop from the driveway to the
water.
To the pool. Goes from 995 to 980. Give or take.
So it's it
10 to
falls.
15 feet, let's say, below the driveway, making it less visible from the street. And we've heard earlier cases, the reserve septic system, have you located that from the health department to know where your secondary septic system is? I see your primary is located
Oh, yeah,
in this
the
drawing.
secondary is to the left of the home, so it's sort of a gray water. So sort of where you see sort of that nook right there, that breakfast nook marked with the 13-foot. So it is in that space there.
So the back left corner of your home?
The back left corner, exactly. Okay. That's the gray water.
Another line of questioning I'm sure you've thought through and heard tonight was around runoff, water mitigation and runoff. What has Georgia Classic Pools recommended in terms of managing potential impervious surface runoff? Not potential, but actual.
Well, I guess the short answer is keeping that distance away from a state water. So from that fall, basically we're only covering with impervious surfaces something in the single digits of the 5.5 acres. So it will fall into that floodplain area, I guess, the natural water would, but still keeps us 200 feet away from state water.
Is this a saltwater pool?
It is.
So there haven't been any specific designs or engineering around flow wells or French drains pertaining to this?
There have not been.
Would you've heard our discussions around that. It's something especially around streams, something we are mindful of.
Sure.
Have you had any discussions with Georgia Classic Pools on that?
We haven't, based on the volume of property. So it literally has not come up. I guess the feeling is that there's plenty of absorption available. So there's no neighboring property that it would fall toward. I'm open to recommendations, but I don't know exactly I don't know exactly why I would retain the water versus letting it naturally flow into the floodplain.
I'm not going to engineer that either.
Yeah.
We'll leave that to the experts. A pool and its pool surface, the decking, creates a more concentrated area of directed flow.
Mm-hmm.
And so oftentimes capturing that and allowing it to seep more
Seep
naturally is a way of mitigating directed flow erosion. That's the extent of what I'm going to get involved in.
I understand.
We'll
I
leave it to
understand
the
your
professionals on staff to
Right, I mean,
review.
it'll be reviewed for hydraulic, by our plan review engineer. So if there was anything that needed additional types of the French drain or flow well, then, they would ask the pool contractor to include that in the plan.
In your case, along the rear of the pool, parallel to the stream, it looks like you're going to have a modular wall, correct?
True.
And behind that wall would be a drain system as well. So that is one mechanism, perhaps.
To catch.
Again, leaving it to staff, they may have been accounting for that to capture the water as your topography flows down to that wall, captured in
Makes
the
sense.
drain system behind the wall.
Understand.
So again, that's not our area of expertise, but it is something that we consider. Any other questions for the applicant?
I have one. Just want to make sure you're aware of these 3 conditions that the staff recommends. The landscaping, the pool barrier fence, and the lighting.
The third one was new to me tonight, but it seems like a really good idea. So we have no concern with that being, we don't want it to be, commercial flood lighting anyway. So that seems like a good idea. We'll abide by that. But I'm not familiar with the ordinance thus far.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, if there's no additional questions for the applicant, at this point, we'll open it for public comment, and you'll have a chance to make a statement at the end if you care. You have a seat real quick. Staff, do we have any public comment cards or anyone on Zoom or the phone who is interested in speaking?
Anybody, there aren't any in person nor on Zoom.
All right. I'm sorry to have you sit and then perhaps come right back up. Do you have any closing comments you care to make?
I'm good.
You're good with no comments. Any further questions for staff or the applicant before I close the public comment? All right. I will make note that the public comment is closed, and I'll open the floor for a motion and a second.
I'll make a motion to approve 1-03, 960 Landrum Road, based on the site plan. There's a date on this one. By Georgia Classic Pools. Date
10/15/20.
dated 10/15/20, with the conditions set forth by staff, which is the landscaping plan to be approved, the lighting to be approved, and the pool fencing.
All right, let me read those, or can you read those as they?
Sure. Landscaping for screening to be approved by the city arborist. Pool barrier to be installed with 4-board equestrian fence. Lighting at the pool and cabana to comply with the night sky ordinance. Set forth by staff.
Any conditions regarding community development director review?
I don't see an issue with this on 5+ acres, and they don't exceed their 20% impervious calc. So I don't know that you can. I don't even know that we can.
Yeah, I mean, I
don't
think
think we can
it's a
even
very
enforce-
large parcel, so it's a little
think we
bit
can even
different than
enforce
looking
that.
at 1 acre versus 5+, so.
Just clarifying. So I will second that motion. The motion is to approve according to the site plan by Georgia Classic Pools. Paraphrasing here, the landscape plan to be approved by the city arborist for screening purposes. 4-board fence surrounding the pool area. Lighting at pool and cabana to comply with night sky ordinance. Is there any discussion? I think staff, again, has done a nice job in identifying in their presentation the 4 items of consideration for our variances. And the applicant has done a nice job in working to present very clear plans illustrating not only their design, but also some of the key considerations regarding the topography, floodplains, streams, and distances to those items. Makes it easier for us to evaluate this. There's no further discussion. All those in favor of approval according to the site plan with those three conditions, say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. Motion passed unanimous. Good luck, and please continue to work with staff on next steps. Good luck with your project. Okay, the next item on our agenda would be V21-04910 Nix Road.
V21-04910 Nix Road. Requested variance 1 is to allow existing barn not housing animals to remain in the front yard. And second, to allow the existing barn to encroach into front yard setback. The site is 3.04 acre lot located on west side of Birmingham Highway and north side of Nix Road. This property is zone AG1 and is located in rural Milton Overlay District. The property was part of subdivision that created 3 lots in 2019. The property is currently being accessed from Nix Road. Per section 64-416I, a barn not housing animal can be in the rear or side yard. And per section 64-416B, an accessory structure cannot be in the setback. This barn existed on the property before subdividing in 2019. The property is being considered for further development and requires bringing all the existing structures in compliance before obtaining a new permit. The applicant wished to keep the barn instead of removing it. As per the plat, the barn is not only in the front yard but also within the 60-foot front yard setback. Therefore, these two variances are requested. Exhibit A shows the subject property with adjacent 2 lots created with the platting process. It also shows the location of this barn. It's marked as to be demolished. And it shows an old house that has been demolished last year with the DRB's approval. The applicant wants to continue using the accessory structure as a storage. Exhibit B shows picture of this barn. On February 2nd, 2021, DRB met and had following comments. DRB recommends getting letters of support from the neighbors. DRB recommends showing pictures of the barn as seen from Birmingham Highway and Nix Road. DRB recommends approval. Staff response. Part 1. The relief, if granted, would not offend the spirit or intent of the ordinance, since the barn is not close to Nix Road or Birmingham Highway. Both the codes intend to keep the accessory structures away from the road. Part 2. Prior to subdividing, this property was a horse farm and a barn was compliant with the zoning code. This structure is consistent with the Milton's view shed, and the city is actively encouraging keeping such barns. It would create an unnecessary hardship if the barn is not allowed to stay. For these reasons, this variance can be granted. Relief, if granted, would not cause a substantial detriment to public good and surrounding properties because with the setback requirement on the adjacent property, there would be sufficient buffer between the structures. Part 4. The public safety, health and welfare are secured, and that substantial justice is done with continued use of the barn that is consistent with rural Milton's rural character. Staff recommends approval of the variance.
Any questions for staff?
Yeah, not to be nitpicky, it probably doesn't make any difference, but in the background, isn't this on the east side of Birmingham Highway?
It is.
Okay. It just says west, no big deal.
We apologize, yeah.
No, I don't know if it makes any difference, you know.
Is the applicant the one who also subdivided this property?
It is, yes.
And I think staff noted in this report, upon initially subdividing this property, the barn was deemed to be demolished as part of that.
Correct, that was his intent, yes.
Okay. All right. Any other questions for staff? Yes.
Do we have any letters from the adjacent property owners, either in support or against?
Staff has not received any letters.
If we were to approve this, we'd essentially be grandfathering the barn in. Would it be, in other words, if the barn was the historic-looking barn that Milton likes, would he have the right to tear that barn down and then build another structure that we would be able to?
I think it's a question for the city attorney.
I'm going to take which one the question?
Do we essentially give him the right forever to have a structure, a footprint there?
Well,
that would be he could put a metal structure if he wanted to put a metal structure there.
It would depend on any conditions that you impose.
Okay,
if you grant a variance to allow a structure generally on that location, yes.
I guess what I'm asking is, could we approve the variance with the condition that this barn is acceptable? If he were to tear this barn down, then he would no longer have the right to build back another structure, another barn.
You could limit it to, I think you could limit it to this structure.
Yeah. Okay.
So limiting the variance to existing barn as noted in Exhibit B, which would be then, to your point, Jason, I would limit the variance to that structure and not to any future structures.
Yeah, and I would, if you intended to spell that, I mean,
yeah,
I hear you.
Because I think to Todd's point, this is kind of self-inflicted by subdividing the lots. He decided to subdivide. So, and the way it works out is I wouldn't have a problem with the barn. But if it was to give him the forever right to put a structure, whatever the footprint of this barn size is, then
I understand.
The
variance is to allow this structure. You can place reasonable limitations on it, and your limitation is that you're only interested in allowing a variance for this particular structure. That's the one that you consider meets all of the four standards criteria.
Okay.
All right, any other questions for staff? All right, with that, I guess I'd ask the applicant then to come forward, state your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening. My name is Antonio Garcia Abado, 910 Nix Road, Milton, Georgia. The reason behind this keeping the structure here is when I bought the property, I was on the middle of the middle of the lot, and I didn't think about at that time, if I want to divide it or not. And when we divided the property, it fell on the setback, as the staff said, and the front yard. Technically 4 yard, but it's not really the front yard because the front of this property is Nix Road. When I intended to build a house, which I'm in the process of doing it, I sold the property. I sold the house on this property, and I'm working on the plans now for the site plan. The access on this property always been in 910 Nix Road, and I intended to keep it that way if it's approved, on the site plan. So basically, the barn will stay on the rear of this property when I build a house. And inside the building line, yeah, that part is not really, I mean, questionable because it's what it is. You know, it's still on the side, I mean, property setback. Since last meeting, they asked me to get letters. I got 2 letters from neighbors, the most affected ones, I guess. The one I bought the property on Birmingham, which is right behind. I mean, the barn stays right behind the.
Is that lot 1?
Yeah, lot 1. Yeah.
Okay.
I have a letter from him, and I have a letter from the lot 2 is still mine. It's sold, but it's not. The buyer agrees with me too. I mean, with the barn and everything, there's no problem at all. But he didn't want to sign the letter because it's not technically the owner yet. And
Can you, would you please provide the letter that you do have from Lot 1 to staff so we can have that for the record?
Yeah, sure. The other letter is from the neighbor on the right of lot number 2, on the other side, Nix. Basically, it's Nix Road and Birmingham Highway, around that little corner. There's the other neighbor, which he walks every day on Nix Road, and he likes the barn. You know, when I bought the property, the barn was really, really in bad shape. And since I didn't know what was going to happen with the property at that time, I decided to pretty much fix it up on the outside, paint it, brand new paint, brand new roof. So, I mean, that is how it's looking like right now. I got some pictures also from both roads.
Oh, you can put them right there on the screen, and that'll project them. That'll be perfect.
That is from the Birmingham Highway.
So that's looking between lots 1 and lot 2?
Yes, yeah. The one lot on the left, lot 2 is about to close on the right, and the barn is right behind it. All those, I built this like a screen, evergreen screen on the back of lot 1 per buyer request. So that with time, that will be pretty much a screen. So it will not be any. Same thing from lot number 2. I did all on both sides, on the side and the back, all evergreens, so it will all grow and cover that barn as well. And from the new property, it will not, I mean, it will not see the other houses either. So this is the other one is from the Nix Road, right from a little bit before the driveway. I have some stumps from the previous house still to be removed, so I could not take exactly from the driveway. But you can see all the trees that are done on both sides, on both properties, so it will be all covered. And I mean, neighbors on the back, it's always been there. So I haven't talked to them, and I don't know. I mean, I cannot have any input from them, but the sign is there, and I don't think I have any opposition either.
What's the use of it? Is it a guest house or is it a?
No, since I bought the property, I cleaned it. The previous owner had it really, really abandoned, pretty much. So it was, I cleaned the whole thing inside, and I'm using that right now for storage while I'm building the houses. And the new buyer for the property, which is here with us today, if you want any questions for him, he and many of the prospects that been looking at the property before him, they all were asking me about, is the barn is not remain the property? So I said, well, Platt says it has to be demolished, but we can always do the variance if it's possible to maintain it. So that's the reason behind this. Right now, it's, as I said, just a storage building. There was an apartment on top, but it's not. It's totally halfway built because when I remodeled this, basically the roof, new roof, that was pretty bad shape, so everything was pretty much to remove it. So right now it's not in use at all. It's nothing, no power, no nothing. So it's just just a barn over there. I mean, nice. I mean, my opinion, nice looking barn.
You mentioned apartment, and I think you were asking about whether it was a, living
Well, it
quarters
says
or
no
a house.
farm animals, so I was wondering if it's a carriage house or is it a,
Yeah, a guest house or, yeah.
exactly, yeah.
Or when you say apartment, can you explain a little bit more what is included in the loft area of that?
Yeah, you see the two windows on top of the main door. Yeah, one window is literally storage for like a air conditioning. The other window is the living room. The access is on the right, and it's just one big room. We used to have a kitchen, and then there's a room, like a bedroom behind it, facing the other side, with a little bathroom. And nothing of that is, no kitchen, nothing. I mean, it's just totally empty now. I mean, I don't think it's buildable again unless it's totally remodeled, basically, and that would be part of the planning department, I guess, if it's allowed or not, because I have no idea.
I'd ask on that topic of what is its use and what is it characterized or defined as by staff. If it does have living space in terms of a bedroom, kitchen, and bathroom, that would qualify it as a guest house, wouldn't it?
But I thought the applicant was saying that they cleared all that out. That there's no electricity, there's no plumbing. It's just, you're just saying that there were rooms that were a bathroom.
I
They're
just wanted
not
to clarify.
currently a
No,
bathroom,
it's not.
not currently a kitchen. It's just open space.
It's not usable, no.
Right.
Okay. All right. Thank you for I misunderstood. And we can make sure that's clear in our conditions as well.
So
And you're also not intending this to be used going forward for animals?
Right now, as I have it, is just a storage. Second floor, I don't use it at all. It's nothing to hold over there, I mean, because I have enough space for storage on top. But no, it's no
Okay.
use.
That, living space in terms of a guest house or apartment and animals brings up a lot of different considerations for us. So if we
Yeah.
limit those to no animals
No
and not
animals.
having it as living space, therefore it becomes storage.
Storage, yes. That's my
But
intent.
I think what we're trying to clarify is, I know this isn't, you're trying to sell the property. So we're trying to understand the intent of the barn. Because if your new homeowner isn't planning on making it a guest house or a pool house or any type of storage that we restrict, you understand there's an issue there.
Yeah,
So we're
maybe
trying to
we can
completely
ask-
understand what your intent is.
Yeah, maybe gonna ask him if that was I don't know.
Yeah,
We can. They can speak in public comment.
yeah. They'll have an opportunity to speak as a public comment if they want to do that.
You don't actually are under contract?
Yes.
Oh, you are under contract?
Yeah.
I'd ask our city attorney, how should we address that in terms of questions for the future homeowner? Should they be handled now or in public comment?
Well, if you have questions for the applicant, they're here in front of you. It would probably be incumbent on the applicant to want to resolve your questions. You can't call someone out of the audience
Okay.
by force.
That's what I thought. All right. That's what I thought.
But you could ask if they're willing.
Got it.
Yeah, we're just trying
And
to
in terms
clarify.
of
I don't have anything on the contract saying that I'm gonna finish the the house is big enough, unfinished basement, as contracted. So, I mean, that doesn't say that maybe in the future, the homeowner, decides to do something with that. That would be, I mean,
That's all we're trying to clarify. We're not trying to act like you're trying to do something that without. We're just trying to ask if there's what the
reason
intent
behind
is.
the variance is to keep the structure over there as it sits for storage.
Okay.
That's what I intended to do it.
Yeah.
So I think I would just.
No
interject-
animals. I want to think there were no animals on that.
Yeah, I would just interject that, I mean, obviously, you don't know in 2 or 3 years down the road if the new owners want to do X or Y with it. They have every right to come back.
Right.
Let's say if they do want to put an apartment up there, then they'd have to ask for a variance to allow guest house to be in the front yard. So, anytime that there would be changes, we would want to make sure that they had the appropriate permits, and if they need variances to go with it, we would advise them that they would need to come to this board to ask for variances. I think it's hard to get somebody to commit to something for eternity to say it'll never be X or Y, but they have an opportunity, if they'd so choose, to want to change it to an animals or to,
Yeah, I agree. The only reason I was asking is because he was saying that the property was under contract, and it shortly may not be his property anymore. So I was just curious if we were putting restrictions on something that the other homeowner may decide he was intending to use it. So that was the only reason for my question. But if your intention is storage, we'll just leave it at that.
I mean, that way it was agreed, that was applying for the variance to keep it as a storage, because they told me no animals. I didn't know about the requirement for 100 foot if it's going to be an animal. So, yeah, they know that too. So, I mean, that was their intentions, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, storage use or whatever in the variance, yeah, that's okay.
Any additional questions for the applicant? All right, you can take a seat, and we'll open it up for public comment. If there's anyone to speak in favor, we'll just have a couple minutes, please, given that we are bound by overall 10 minutes, then I think we spent a fair amount of time. We'll then move to anyone wishing to speak in opposition for a maximum of 10 minutes. Have you filled out a yellow comment card?
I have not.
All right, well, you can come and speak to us, and then I'd ask you to then fill out a public comment card.
You bet.
If you would please state your name and address for the record.
Yeah, sure. Good evening. My name is Garrett Pendleton. Currently reside at 2527 Haberfield Court in Brookhaven, Georgia. And we're excited to relocate to Milton as soon as Antonio can build us a house on this piece of property we've contracted for. One of the draws, despite living in Brookhaven and seeing a piece of flat land we could salivate over, was the fact that there's this kitschy barn on it. It has character that it adds to the property. As far as intended use, honestly, I can't tell you, ladies and gentlemen, what we're going to decide that we might want to do. Right now, I'm going to hemorrhage cash for the immediate future and get the house built. We may have some designs and ideas that we may want to visit with you in the future about. But for today, we understand the limitations and the application that's been submitted. And we're comfortable with those restrictions as we've contracted. And I understand the process. I think fair enough to be willing to go down that road at a later date. Immediately the only use we'll get out of it is hide and seek for my 8, 10, and 6-year-old kids. So appreciate the education you're giving my kids. The 8-year-old almost made it all the way here. So appreciate your attention to the matter. We'll hope that you do grant the variance. I think it does add a lot of character to the piece of property, especially right now as you can view it from Birmingham Road. I mean, it's pretty noticeable as you make that bend just passing Nick's. And, it's a colorful piece of Milton character in my view, and hope to gain your approval on the applicant's application.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
And please do fill out a yellow
I
card.
will do that right now.
Is there any additional public comment? Is there anyone online wishing to speak in opposition?
No, I don't see anybody.
No.
No. Okay. The applicant does have an opportunity for any final comments, if you care. No, you're not interested. Is there any final questions to staff or the applicant? Okay, I'll make note that the public comment is closed, and I'll open the floor for a motion.
I'm sorry, I do have a question.
Oh, go ahead.
As he was saying, he intends really for the front of this property to be on Nick Road, and we're judging it based on the front of it being Birmingham. Is that something that is formally changed, once, you know what I'm saying?
That's a question for staff.
It's weird.
So your question is about what is considered the front?
Well, we're judging this based on the front of this property being Birmingham Highway, correct?
Correct, that's the technical front. So we don't care which way, because that's
Driveway is, or
so even though it has two frontages, it has the frontage on Birmingham Highway and Nix, then the primary frontage or the front is the shortest distance of those two frontages. So the shorter distance is on Birmingham, the longer is on Nix, and therefore the front is technically Birmingham. Even though you may go down the road and I don't know which position his house is going to be positioned in, we just look at it as far as geometry and what the definition of front is, and then we have something called a side corner, and a side corner is the longer of two frontages.
That's fine. So it'll always be Birmingham Highway.
Right.
It's the
Yeah,
front.
because this will never be able to be subdivided because it requires 3 acres when it abuts a gravel road,
Gravel
so.
road.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in regardless of the technical definition of front, side, or whatever, this would still require a variance because it's
in
defined
the
as the
setback.
front, but if it was defined as the side, it's still within that side yard setback.
Yeah, it just wouldn't encroach technically as much, but.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the animals piece with the 100 feet applies regardless of sideline, front, side, or rear.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any last questions to staff or the applicant? Or, staff? All right, I'll make a note that the public comment is closed, and I'll open the floor for a motion in a second. I'll make a motion to approve V21-04 to allow the existing barn not housing animals to remain in the front yard and to allow the existing barn to encroach into the front yard setback according to site plan by Diversified Technical Group, LLC, dated 1/11/2021. And I'd also have some conditions to limit the variance to the existing barn as noted in Exhibit B in location per the site plan. Second condition would be to limit the use to storage, not housing animals, and not used as a living quarter or guest house.
Second.
Any discussion? I would point that staff is consistent in this meeting preparation with their points regarding our 4 variance considerations. I do feel it was appropriate, given the orientation on this property, to make it clear for this use and future owners that there is some limitations regarding animals as well as potential for guest houses in limiting to this specific barn as it's drawn, or as it's placed on the site plan and as it exists in Exhibit B. Any further discussion? All those in favor of approving V21-04 according to the...
Before we go, did we get a second on that?
Yes.
Hodge. Thank you.
According to the site plan and the 2 conditions of existing barn location, as well as the limitations of use, say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. That motion passed unanimous. The next variance request, primary variance request, and the last one on our agenda tonight is V21-05, 14500 Wood Road. Would staff please present?
V2105, 14500 Wood Road. Requested variance is to allow the existing garage and a barn not housing animal to encroach into the side yard setback as shown on the survey issued 12/16/2020. The site is a 6.75-acre lot located on the south side of Wood Road. This property is zoned AG1 and is located in rural Milton Overlay District. Exhibit A shows the two accessory structures on this property, a garage and a barn. It shows both the structures encroaching into side setbacks. The house and the pool on the property are in compliance with the zoning ordinance. Exhibit B is showing the aerial view of the structure on this property. Exhibit C shows the pictures of the garage and the barn. Per section 64-416C1, an accessory structure cannot be in the side setback. As mentioned earlier, the applicant plans to build a new home at this property, and the city requires bringing all non-compliant issues into compliance before obtaining a new building permit. Therefore, the applicant is requesting a variance. Design Review Board met on February 2nd, 2021 and had following comments. DRB recommends getting letters of support from neighbors. DRB recommends approval. Staff response. Part 1. The garage and the barn are physically away from the neighboring houses and Wood Road. Therefore, relief, if granted, would not offend the spirit of the ordinance. Part 2. Both the structures were built prior to the formation of the city, and both the structures are in fair shape and can be continued to be used. It would create an unnecessary hardship to require removal of them. Therefore, this variance can be granted. Relief, if granted, would not cause a substantial detriment to the public good and surrounding properties because the size of the surrounding properties are larger than 3 acres. The public safety, health, and welfare are secured, and a substantial justice is done with continued use of garage and barn, not housing animals. Staff recommends approval of the variance.
Are there any questions for staff? This is a AG1 property, existing uses residential. What are some of the permitted uses? And this is a large property, right? 6.75 acres. Permitted uses within AG1?
Yeah, by right, without any additional use permits would be a nursery. We have a couple of nurseries in the city that propagate and raise their plants and sell off the property. And then also a kennel, if they meet the requirements of fencing, as you all are familiar with, or buildings from the property lines. A veterinary clinic, obviously they would need to get building permits, et cetera, but it's a permitted use in AG1 that would not require any use permit or additional zoning. Those are kind of the primary, and a tack shop too. So.
Tack shop? Okay. And those are uses without a permit, but are also have conditions in terms of setbacks and such.
Correct. Yes.
To be compliant.
Right.
And then permitted uses?
With use permits?
Use permits, yes.
Common ones that we have in the city are landscape businesses, where they have their trucks and equipment, and many times an office where so it's not so much as storage. They can do some storage, but we limit it. So a landscape business with a use permit, an event facility with a use permit, with, I believe you have to have minimum 5 acres. So we also have a indoor-outdoor event like what Matilda's is. That's on AG1. Trying to think. There are a few other ones, but those are the most common that we've run into as far as utilizing the use permit in AG1.
Okay. And it looks like the intended use of these is storage, so we can clarify those with the applicant to see how this barn and garage are intended to be used. Any additional questions for staff? Okay, if the applicant would come forward, state your name and address for the record, please. Hi.
Hey, I'm Heather Duffy. I'm actually consulting for the owners at 14500 Wood Road.
Okay, and your address?
12400 Charlotte Road. Drive. I think it's Drive. We haven't
Okay.
lived there long.
So could you help us understand what
Sure.
you or the applicant's trying to do?
Sure. They are the goal is to demo their main house, which we've already got DRB approval for, and we're working on city approval for that as well. And then we would be applying for a building permit to build them a new ranch home in basically the same location that the current house is in, utilizing the existing driveway, the existing pool, existing barn, and existing garage.
Okay. And you heard some of my questions of staff. The intended use of this barn would not be for housing animals?
No, the barn is just storage, lawn equipment,
Storage, okay.
yard equipment.
In the garage?
The garage is storing vehicles. That's a
I wish I
four-car.
had that. So there are no, what I would consider to be commercial. I asked about the use permits to understand about commercial use of these accessory structures. Are there any currently and any contemplated?
Not currently. He had a nursery in the past, but that's shut down, right, Kim? Yes.
Okay. No commercial uses. All right. Are there any questions for the applicant? Well, that's quick. All right, well, then, if you don't have any questions for us, then I'll open it for public comment, and then we'll see if anything else comes up. Is there any public comment here in person or online?
Well, the owner is on the Zoom and he wanted to speak.
Oh, that's fine. We can do that.
Okay. Mr. Nadler, you can unmute yourself. Mr. Nadler, you can speak now.
Robin, while they're doing that, can we put the pictures with the Exhibit B?
Okay, it's up there, so I think he's trying to deal with the audio. There, he's got it, yeah.
All right. We're trying to work out the audio here, so bear with us. Can we also show the picture in Exhibit B, which shows a little bit more of the surroundings?
Sure.
Sorry, I should have had you put this up when Ms. Duffy was speaking. The Exhibit B, which notes the barn, house, and garage. Go back a couple pages.
Page 7 of 8.
Yeah, 7 of 8. There you go.
Perfect, thank you. Sorry.
Any luck with Mr. Nadler?
Hello? Okay. He had raised his hand, so I had asked him.
Okay.
You want to put him on the phone and we can put him up to a speaker if he wants to speak on your phone? Come up here to the speaker and then. I'm sorry? Okay.
Yeah, you absolutely can. Come forward, please. No, come to the microphone.
Yeah, you have to come up here.
And just for the record, please state your name and address as well.
Kim Nadler, 14500 Wood Road.
Okay.
That the barn is a barn, no animals, but is built for animal use. There's stalls, but we don't have horses, nor do we ever plan to.
Okay. That's what he wanted to clarify.
That's what he wanted to say.
Okay.
Okay.
Does staff have any idea how long these structures, or maybe Ms. Nadler?
Am I unmuted now?
Yeah, you are.
Yes, you are.
We're awake.
Go ahead, counsel, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. It's a delay.
Go ahead if you wanted to make a comment.
I was just same comment as I think I caught the end of my wife saying that the barn has been in existence as far as we know prior to even a house structure being there, which would be somewhere dated as far as we know pre-1970. And its intended use is a 3-stall horse barn. I don't want y'all to lose the fact of that, even though we do not currently have any animals.
Understood. Thank you for clarifying. That's an important piece of clarification. So by your knowledge, that barn has been in existence since the 1970s?
Well, legend has it.
Okay. It's been there a while. Certainly before we've become a city.
Absolutely. Anything on our property is that way.
Yes. Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. Is there anything else you wanted to add?
No, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Is there any other public comment?
No.
Okay. Ms. Duffy or Ms. Nadler, you have an opportunity to make any closing comments. We may have some questions for you as well.
We did not get letters of written support, but we do have verbal support from all 3 neighbors behind them and to the side of them. So the Sollys, the Rogers, and the Steins have all given verbal approval and have no issue with these since they moved in after they were there.
Okay.
That's
Thank
the only
you
thing I have.
I imagine that was going to be one of our questions. Okay. Any additional questions for staff? You want to pull the microphone down?
Well, I don't even really have any. I was trying to think, but I think basically it's a barn and a garage, and it's been there. The work's not wanting to be done on the barn or the garage. I mean, I don't see any issue why they couldn't stay there.
Okay. Yes.
I just interject, I just looked up on the tax parcel information, if you want to believe the tax parcel information, but according to that, both those structures were built in 1970, as he indicated, so.
Okay.
I'm just curious for my own, would he be able to board horses there again if he wanted to in the future?
Well, if he does, then he'd have to come back to ask for a variance for the setback to.
Oh, because of the 100-foot, I see.
Yeah. Because right now, the request is allowing it to be in the setback, just a normal building setback.
Gotcha, yeah.
Now, with that said, it's kind of hard to monitor what people do with their properties unless somebody says something about it.
Can I reply to that?
Yes, we're not closed with public comment. I'll let you certainly weigh in. Go ahead.
So why would that, if it was an existing structure and its intended use was for a barn, not that we intend to, and not that we plan to sell the house within the next 30, 40 years, why would that change? Y'all adopted a barn that was built for 3 horses. Why would the intended use change because Milton's a new city?
Well, I mean, it's not that it changed, but you're saying that you're not going to use it or utilize it as a barn, so we're just giving it a variance for a setback. If you wanted to use it as a barn, then we could re-advertise and make the variance to the setback for a barn that houses animals.
Or that could house animals.
Or that could house animals.
Leave it as is, just to not complicate
No,
things.
yeah. And it's not
So, yeah,
grandfathered.
this use is
yeah.
not grandfathered.
So it's not, who knows? A lot of things happened. People did things that, weren't necessarily permitted. I mean, obviously, I guess it was permitted because it had.
My point.
Right.
And you, as you probably may have heard in some earlier cases, typically on AG1, not typically, always on AG1, barns housing animals need to be 100 feet from property lines.
Yeah, I mean, I can't reconcile why Fulton County, maybe it was just something that it slipped, that they didn't require a variance or it wasn't caught. So there's not really an explanation. We just try to rectify and correct things as we see them when people come in for permitting.
Right. So.
That's fine.
And that's all.
Thank you for
Thank you.
Thank you for the clarification.
Okay. Are there any additional questions? All right. I'll make a note that the public comment is closed, and I'll open the floor for a motion and a second. I'll make a motion to approve V21-05 to allow the existing garage and barn not housing animals to encroach into the side setback as shown on the survey issued 12/16/2020. Based on that, I don't think we need to make any conditions or clarifications as the limits of use or storage, as we've discussed and as the variance request is asking for.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of approving V21-05, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. The motion passed unanimous. Then good luck with your home project. Item number 7 on our agenda was consideration of appeals and secondary variances. Do we have any?
No, we don't.
Is there any old business?
I don't think
No?
so.
Any new business?
I would like to kind of get your input just to, as far as the reports and referencing to the site plans. I know for my planning commission, I typically stamp everything received a certain date, and if there's a revision done, I stamp it revised with the new date. I think sometimes it's difficult to look at a site plan, and not always does the applicant update the revision on the plan. So I'm just asking if you'd like me to have us to present the site plans in the same manner, so it's very clear when you reference a site plan, you could reference it received by the Community Development Department on X date, and that way it's very clear no matter what, which site plan you're referring to. And maybe Angela used to do it that way and it got lost, I don't know, but that's the practice that I make in Planning Commission.
I think we would all unanimously agree with that.
Okay.
So please do that going forward. I think it'll help all of us to be clear.
Right. Yeah, I think it just makes it easier, especially if there's revisions, and make sure.
And it'll benefit the applicant as well.
Yeah, okay.
And as far as the way you're now presenting the breakdown of the 4 considerations with some rationale, that's excellent. We didn't
Okay.
used to get that at all, and I'm finding it very helpful.
Okay, no problem. We're open to whatever other suggestions you may have as well, so.
Any other new business?
How many cases do we have next month?
Case,
I think we just have 2.
I was wondering that to myself. I'm like, hopefully we get a little reprieve here.
sounds like 2. We're catching up. Well, we had a setback with
Right.
advertising in one case and then not having quorum, so this was a longer night than normal. So next month, let's cross our fingers. All right, opening the floor for the next motion.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second. Any discussion? All those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. We are adjourned. Please leave your paperwork here for open records.
Yeah.